I think automation is great, particularly at making an existing process more efficient. But with AI, you really need to look at how do you change business processes to take advantage of the power of AI. You have to unlearn making obsolete processes more efficient. Change the process. Don't continue with an obsolete process that's more efficient.
Welcome. You're listening to ctrl+alt+disrupt, the podcast where we explore how technology transforms the way we live, work, and make things. I'm Constantinou, and if you're an executive, an engineer, or someone deciding where to place your next technology bet, you already know this. Your products are getting smarter, your supply chain is getting more unpredictable, but your factory is often still making decisions the same way you did 10 years ago. The uncomfortable truth is that many so-called digital factories are still running on analog decision-making, hero operators, tribal knowledge, and meetings to decide things that machines could have predicted hours ago. The risk isn't that robots will replace people, it's that your competitors will use AI to rewire how fast and how well their factories can think. So today, we're not asking what's AI, we're asking what does it look like when your factory becomes a learning system, where AI, people, and machines make better decisions together in real time. My guest, Fram Akiki, has spent more than 3 decades helping the world's top tech companies make smarter chips and smarter factories at IBM, Qualcomm, and Siemens. And now as president of Joun Technologies, he spends his time inside the plants that are already starting to play this new game. Fram, welcome to ctrl+alt+disrupt.
Thank you, Dennis. I did some quick math, and I have now gone over 4 decades in tech. And so, when you're young, you do all that you can to show that you have more experience. Now we just say more than 3 decades to sound younger.
Great to have you here. Let's jump straight into what has to change inside the factory mindset. To get really practical, when you walk into a traditional manufacturing plant, what's the mental model you still see driving decisions today?
Dennis, surprisingly, I still see a lot of paper, documents, spreadsheets, even Post-it notes. And, you see humans making decisions with the help of automation and access to data, but the data seems very limited, not much real-time data and somewhat limited in scope. I love the quote from Albert Einstein that says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And I think automation is great, particularly at making an existing process more efficient. But with AI, you really need to look at how do you change business processes to take advantage of the power of AI. You have to unlearn making obsolete processes more efficient. A lot of firms out there, they've published what I call these digital maturity scorecards or other metrics. But for me, I look at 2 key elements: data and collaboration. These 2 elements are unlocked really as part of the digital transformation process. And for me, data means real-time data that provides information, insight that ultimately can drive better decision-making. And collaboration means not just breaking down silos, you hear that term quite a bit between groups, but having them actively work together, including sharing data. A few years ago, I ran a workshop for C-level execs in the electronics and semiconductor industry. I had about 16 of them together for a day and a half. And I asked them the infamous question, what keeps you up at night? And their answer, surprisingly, amongst the group, focused on 2 themes: time to market and explosion of complexity. And the explosion of complexity included market complexity, product complexity, supply chain complexity. And plants that are getting it right see the results in those 2 areas: time to market and the ability of organizations to handle complexity. A great example that always pops into my head is what we did with one company in the area of advanced planning and scheduling, sometimes referred to as APS. And let's put it in the context of those two themes I talked about earlier, data and collaboration. So although APS normally resides in a manufacturing environment, this particular solution that we worked on interfaced with sales, design, and of course, other groups inside of manufacturing. And by using data coming from these other groups, so data like sales forecasts and design details and design complexity, it provides a optimized decision making, not only for better manufacturing, like you mentioned, things like reduced downtime, optimized yield, but also fed into some more strategic decisions that are important on the manufacturing floor. So, what equipment purchases do you need to think about, or even how do you lay out the factory floor?
Let's talk about how humans inside this learning factory. And you said before that the line operator becomes more of the data detective. That's kind of what you were alluding to here, and that the engineer becomes kind of like the AI coach in this process. At a human level, what identity shift does that require from an operators and engineers?
I've had this conversation literally 3 times already during the past week, and with 3 different individuals. And independently, all 3 of them told me the same thing. They said, Fram, the art of what's possible now has gone through the roof. In the past, getting access to the right data or collaborating with other groups, these 2 themes I keep harping on, was sometimes difficult. You didn't have enough programmers to put together automated data feeds. There were all these bottlenecks, if you will. So at the human level, I think it's important to realize that a lot of the barriers that existed before are gone. And as a result of that, just a short period of time ago, what wasn't possible is now possible. I think AI does a few things, some specifics. I talked about not enough programmers, or trying to put together automated data feeds. And I was talking with one individual who told me, hey, I'm using all these kinds of software tools. Cursor is one example, which has allowed me to basically, I had a 3-month backlog of features that I wanted to try to get into providing automated data feeds and codes and whatnot. And by using tools like that, essentially in a weekend, I was able to clear out 3 months of feature backlog. So if you can think about something, your ability to actually quickly execute on it, you have an idea. I want data from this location, and I need it from this group. The old model was, I got to find someone who can program this, test it, etc. Now you've got AI tools that can virtually make that connection, do it, provide you with the code, and you're off and running.
What are your thoughts in terms of the human in the loop, and when do you trust it and when do you question it?
I think it starts with trying to understand the confidence factor. So every model has limitations as to what it can handle with high levels of accuracy versus, something less than a high level of accuracy. And I recall early days, I asked ChatGPT a question, and I saw the answer, and I knew the answer was absolutely wrong. But it not only gave me the wrong answer, it did it in a very definitive fashion. And so if I hadn't known for a fact that it was wrong, it was a question actually about my hometown, Tupper Lake in upstate New York. And I was absolutely sure that it was wrong. Someone else would have taken that answer and just run with it. So I think it's important that whatever system you're using, if it doesn't give you some sort of transparency to its limitations, a confidence factor or what it's been trained to make decisions on. It might, it's important to know that up front.
If you had to bet biggest bottleneck for AI in electronics manufacturing, technology, data, regulation, talent, or culture, and why?
I think it will be people and people-based. Somewhat related, I guess, I was having a discussion around security in the manufacturing environment, and just data security in general. And the security expert was telling me that, by far, the weakest link is always people in security. And I think to a certain extent, more broadly to your question, I think people. And so people obviously means not only talent, which I think we're going to have potential talent shortages and getting the right talent to feed, but it also means culture, right? All those behaviors that we were talking about before that need to change. So I think it's going to center around people being the biggest bottleneck. And I think another area in terms of impact that I'm not sure has been kind of fully appreciated yet will be the impact to innovation. AI is going to allow for a much greater funnel of ideas. And then of those ideas, getting the right one to scale and into production much faster. So again, when we were talking about the AI piece, and I mentioned the programmer in the manufacturing environment, right? They're clearing through their backlogs. They're getting rid of a lot of these barriers, and so the art of what's possible now is becoming much more real. So be the person who's best at combining AI with whatever your role is within the manufacturing environment. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, was asked a similar question not too long ago at the World Economic Forum. And, they said, Jensen, 10 years ago, you told young engineers, learn programming. And everyone was saying you should go out and learn programming. And they said, what about now? And Jensen essentially said, focus on your discipline or getting a discipline expertise and jumpstart it with AI. So it's lead with the discipline and use AI to sort of enable that. In the end, it's going to be a huge differentiator for your company, for society, and for you personally. One of the biggest reasons digital transformation projects fail, and I've seen this multiple times personally, is because of the lack of executive management support, true executive management support. So you need to walk the walk and talk the talk. And one of the first messages I typically deliver in companies that I go into to the executive team is you need to drive both vertical engagement. So that means executives all the way down to rank and file. And just as importantly, you need to drive horizontal engagement. So AI is not just an IT project. You need to engage operational teams. And, in the end, companies that do it right will win, and they'll win big. And the ones that don't, they're going to lose, and they're going to be gone fast.
Well, Fram, thanks for this fantastic conversation, not just about smarter machines, but about smarter decisions and smarter partnerships between humans and AI. We've discussed unlearning old factory mindsets, redesigning how decisions are made on the line, and what's at stake over the next 5 years if leaders sit this out. At UST, this is exactly the shift we focused on with our clients, helping them move from automated factories to learning factories that can sense, decide, adapt in real time, not just to drive efficiency, but to build more resilient, more human-centered manufacturing ecosystems. And to everyone listening, if this sparked ideas or maybe a little productive discomfort, share the episode and explore more conversations like this at ust.com/ctrl+alt+disrupt. Until next time, stay curious, stay human, and keep disrupting.